2001, and founder of the highly successful Southminster Rangers. Tom started off his tenure by including 4 of our high school boys on a bell trip that he promised to his former church in Dover, Delaware. And this was a pretty brave move when you consider that none of the 4 of us had ever held a handbell in our hand before. But we made it through, thanks to Tom, and the rest, again, is history. Tom?
Thank you very much, and I can't tell you how delighted I am to be here. I was at the 50th anniversary. I was at the 75th anniversary. And now I'm at the 100th anniversary. I'm sorry, but I will not join you for the 125th. I will be busy. But in any case, it's a pleasure to think back about our years at Southminster and what they have meant to me, and with the wonderful, wonderful memories. And the host of people that were around me to make it all work. As Ted said, it began in 1969. The music committee at that time was Janet Farrell, Bob Patton, Dale Milliken, Lou Berger, Anna Mae Ferguson. And it was in January. I was in Dover, Delaware, at Wesley Methodist Church. And Janet and Paul came, and they said they just wanted to explore the music program that I was having there. A week later, they said, would you come to the church? And I said, no, I'm not interested in going to Pittsburgh. Then Bob Patton showed up, and we had a lovely lunch together, and he said, would you come to Pittsburgh? And I said, Bob, I really don't feel that's where I'm being led to go. Wasn't a while, maybe another fortnight, Dale Milliken arrived. And he stayed, and I still see him standing in the crook of our piano. And he said he's not going to leave the house until I agree to come to Pittsburgh. And my dear wife at that time said, Tom, get ready to go to Pittsburgh. And so, because I was, in a sense, between churches, Dale wanted me to come by Easter. At Easter, the Sunday after Easter, I arrived. But the Wesley Church had a bell team called the Cubbage Ringers, and they were doing some various things, and part of what they were doing was having a tour that summer. And since that was all arranged, Milliken agreed that I could then take time to go with them on the tour, but 4 boys were going to go with us. And Frank Bates gave me the name of 4 young men, and they were Todd Dickinson, Robbie Spangler, Chris Gifford, and Ken Smith. The Cubbage Ringers were busy at the governor's mansion, up and down the state of Delaware. They also played for the national lighting of the Christmas tree over there in Washington. Because handbells were relatively unknown then. There probably were only maybe 100 handbell groups in the entire country. Most of them were Whitechapel, the English bell. So the Cubbage Ringers were very busy, and I sort of took the inspiration from them, what it meant to them. When they had a handbell, it was sort of something magic that was happening about it. You know, the pitches in the bell, so it's more like an athletic event as well as music. And so, sure enough, why we had some recruitment done at Southminster. Southminster had 2 octaves, and adults played. Cordy Sell was on that team, and some of the children played. But we started with a full program for singers. We had a choir, the adult choir, and we had choirs from singers from the birds to grave. At whichever end you were on first, you could join us in singing. So it was a wonderful program, and then that's how the handbells started. On the tour that we went to England, Janet Farrell was very good in contacting the BBC, and we did several broadcasts with them. Radio was the thing, not television. And it was years later that I found that there was a friendship book where a woman made a devotional in here, and she remembered the Southminster Ringers and what it meant to her. It's a little wordy, so I won't read it, but it's there. had 2 octaves of bells. We started, and after a while, we got 3 octaves of bells that had 8 ringers. And we were ringing around the town here at Southminster. Certainly all the services at the church, as well as in community events, we were doing that. Closer. Okay. Getting the team together was a problem for me. They were active young people with schoolwork and sports. So the only time that we could really get together to practice on Sunday was the worst time for me, but the best time for them. 4 to 6 Sunday afternoon. I had played 2 services, and I was just done for the day, but that was the only time those kids had no excuse for being there. And some of the families, some of you might remember if your child would play, you had to give up family dinners and such, make arrangements for them to be there. No one missed. It was a team. We said to our choirs, and there was a soprano or 2 who still can continue. But with a team of players, you need the hands to ring the bells. And so it really was a team. We were playing in many places, and it was seasonal work as well. Ducray Interiors always had us when they played. We played on the street in front of their establishment, and all sorts of other places. They were playing for ringers, for weddings, here and around town. I can't begin to tell you the number of places where we played. But I'm going to fast forward a little bit and say that we had 17 European tours. They were every other year we went. We had 3 Canadian tours. We played in all the provinces of Canada. We were in Alaska, and we were told that driving up to Alaska as we drove then, we had rented land, that either the dust or the mud would get us. Both did. I had dust where I never thought one would have dust. And we had more mud. Judy Claver was absolutely marvelous in handling the band. Mary Wilson was along. It was really a great time. One Christmas we went to Cape Canaveral for Miss Lawrence. We played there. And on the way back we stopped at Hilton Head, and I had the privilege of spending some time with Dr. John Calvin Reed, as some of you might remember. Milliken followed him, Tony, and Foster. They were the senior ministers with whom I worked, and there was a plethora of assistants and associates, and it's just too far to remember them. They would change. Richard Crummy always made a mistake by telling them that when their name is off the parking lot, they knew that it was time to make a change. And they never said to them you had to go, but they had the idea that it was time to look for another place to serve, and so they did. We had Kaufman's every year. We were at the Kaufman store playing various Christmas carols, KDKA television, Don Riggs, Keller Channel, living near Highland Games. Christmas Eve we played at outside the service, if you remember, which was a no-no as far as bells go. You weren't supposed to do that with your hand bells, but we did it. And so we had a lot of fun. Mr. Rogers was our national television program. Not only did we have the bell ringers there, but there were other times that the children did some backup music with the pianist that was there. So we had several programs with Mr. Rogers. Newspaper, magazine, articles. We were twice at Legoland, where everybody was pretty much a Lego person. Things were made of Lego, and it was a very interesting experience. Tivoli was a wonderful place where we played. We were on the main stage there, and there were probably 3,000 people in the audience that night. It was a wonderful occasion for us. We were at Kennywood, Polish Day. How we ended up with Polish and Catholics there, that's another long story. But I'll need you at the bar to tell you about that. We played in schools, convents, and Stiffnelt was a monastery in Austria. I remember the priest there, the ancient gentleman, we were sitting on the roof, and he said, see that roadway down there? He said, he remembers the day of Hitler, just going in his open car to take over Austria. So we had many experiences with people who lived then. Whitechapel, where the Liberty Bell was changed, made, Big Bend was a place where they were very kind to make more bells for us because the American counties were not making enough bells. We had more people to play, and we wanted more bells. So Whitechapel was very kind, and so they mixed their bells with our bells so we could have more players. In Florida, one time we met a Carillionaire, and that began some interest in the carillon. Now, as you know, Southminster is a cruciform style church. Very unusual for a Presbyterian church. I don't think you'll find another Presbyterian church around that looks quite like Southminster. However, that was a plus. But above the crossing, there was that tower there that was 36 by 36 square. And there was a record that used to be played in there. Paul Engel had a mechanism, and after a while the neighbors began to complain about that, so the carillon, sort of the record music, was shut down. I thought that was a place for bells at one time. I couldn't imagine it was just an architectural kind of device. It was too big for just a decorative part, so I knew it had to have a purpose. And I was thinking about bells. There was a Pepsi-Cola had a moving carillon, 36 bells on the back of the truck, and they were running around the country advertising their soda and ringing the bells. And I thought, well, we could purchase that when we were through with it. But then that's one person playing all those bells. And I remember when we were abroad, our ringers would be on the ropes in many of the bell towers where they were having a great time ringing. So I thought we need something a little more than that. But in the meantime, one of the youth ministers decided that it should be a handbell court up there, and fortunately that was not going to happen because of insurance purposes and some other things about access. So the handball court never happened up in the tower. I was with Harry Selesky one day, and I said to Harry, who was our custodian for a number of years, I said, Harry, do you hear the bells? And Harry said to me, no. But if you hear them, I know I will. And so I remember that moment very well. They're there today. We traveled by coach, bus, train, plane, ferry, ships, airplane, bicycle, and even one time some of the young people went to their homes on motorcycles. I held my breath. Each time when they were gone overnight, it was a prayer on my lips that I would see them in the morning. And it was so. We never lost a person. Permanently, we never had any major accidents, a few delays, but we were very fortunate in all the travel, all the miles, all the transportation that we had. We never had a incident that was very costly. Our accommodations were in private homes, church halls, schools, camps, hospitals, air and army bases. We were at the air base in Canada. We were at the air base in Iceland twice. And so we were very fortunate to be in many places where not the usual traveler would go. We were invited once to play for the Liverpool Soccer Society, and that was a wonderful evening. I did not realize that Liverpool had two soccer teams. So our boys were dressed in jackets then, a blue jacket, a red jacket, the state. Because when they went to some of the neighborhoods, if they had to change jackets, so that if you were going to a neighborhood with a red jacket team, you read or red jacket. But it was interesting to meet Mr. McAloonan. My first time standing on stage with a midget. He was this short, and I just didn't know whether I bow down, stand up, or whatnot. That's another long story. How that worked out. Mr. and Mrs. Tom Moore donated the kilts that the young people are wearing today. Carnegie Mellon was selling their pipe band kilts. They were used and quite sort of disheveled. But the session, due to their Scottish influence, so it was a good bargain, and so we bought the kilts. Right. There were more holes in them than you can imagine, just top and bottom. But anyway, we wore them quite happily for a number of years. But Tom and his wife wore, we needed to have another tartan, and we didn't want to get involved with the family tartans. So the Canadian Air Force tartan, this purple, well, you've seen them, and it very much matched our windows, all the wonderful windows that we have in the church. And so we were asked permission and given permission to use that tartan, and so that's what you see today. Now, I'm standing here alone, but it was not alone. I have two ladies here tonight. I want to introduce you. Anna Mae Lawson was with me for a number of years. Tour manager for a number of years, and she pointed to point me in the right direction and to say where I am and what I'm doing. And she managed the bus and all sorts of things. Many times she would be making phone calls. You know, we worked with the communications equipment we have now with text and all that business. She had phone calls, and when a cable was available, she could make a call many times in the middle of the night. Anna Mae, would you come join me, please? Anna Mae, would you come join me, please? And then the other lady, Peggy Angers, is here. Peggy was the assistant conductor for a number of years in the very beginning. She was on the first tour that we took as the Southminster Ringers. And Peggy is another one to give you enough stories that will keep you busy for quite a while. But we're not going to do that since we're first, but we don't want to be keeping everybody else. So you have a few comments. You have a speech?
I have a speech.
A short speech. So I have a lot to do here. Right?
You think somebody here is a boss? I don't know where many people who are in this room would have been without Tom Flynn. Whether you were a ringer, or whether you were in the choir, or whether you supported any of those activities. Could you please stand up? Could we see who you are? Thank you. Thank you. Look. You could never have accomplished the things he wanted and Jessica wanted to accomplish without the support of the staff, of the congregation. We never could have. Oh, but for me it was a blessing. And my kids didn't even miss me. Okay. We went on many mission trips in the United States, from the White House, when Reagan's were there.
We had 4 White House performances. 4 White House. First was Nixon, and then it was Reagan and 2 Bushes.
Wow.
They were all Republicans.
Okay. But we were welcomed there for the children. Imagine that kind of an experience for them to have and to remember. So that was good. We were hosted abroad at the Berlin Wall by Catholic nuns. Do you remember that? Yes. And they would tell us how on certain days of the week, people would come with babies and hold them up so they could see their grandparents. Those are things we cannot imagine, but we were told and we saw. In Russia, in a church congregation of 1,000 people, 1,000 worshipers, when Doug Roth sang, "Shall We Gather at the River?" Remember this? Congregation members in the Russian church, 1,000 of them, stood up and sang with him. Where's Diana? That's because Tom took the ringers there. It wasn't easy to get there. And we were followed. 10 minutes after we got into Russia, we were followed. And when we were in the church, Jessica was outside in the bus. Police came and asked her where are the Bibles. We were not bringing Bibles in, but she had to let them go through the bus and go through everything in the bus. We didn't know that was going on because we were in the church. Okay. And every day that we closed the singing, Suzanne Reed. Okay, where's her going? Where's Samantha? Please, please, please. Please. concert, Suzanne Reed would sing while the ringers played, "May the peace of the Lord be always with you as you go from this place." And it was very moving, and it was from the heart, and we meant it. So tonight what I say is, what we want for you this day is, may the peace of the Lord be always with you as you go from this place. Thank you for being here.
Peggy's coming up. Let me tell you that the pastor of that church in Leningrad, then it was Leningrad back then, the communist times, he called from Finland and spoke on the phone, and I asked for the address of the church since we needed to have that for insurance purposes. He said, "I can't give that to you, but if you can get here, we'll host you." And I said, "Well, are you at least the First Baptist Church?" He said, "God willing, when there's a second, we will be the first." It was a moment that we remember. Peggy, do you have one short word to say? Short word, because we're going on. No. But I do want to say that the crown achievement was the Tower Bells, the 8 bells that are there. We were fortunate to have Don Morrison come by, who was an excellent and experienced ringer and looking after that ministry today. So the bells inside the church and the bells outside the church. Peggy and her husband, Don, were with us for a number of years. So, got 2 words.
This is a hard act to follow. I don't want to go into a lot, but I want to get a little bit serious, which for some of you, you know, I don't get serious very often. But one of the things Tom always said was that we were an extended ministry of the church. And I didn't think too much about that, usually. Yes, he loved to get those bells out of the church and on the road someplace. He was very good at that, planning everything. A lot of people didn't know how much planning went into those trips. He was a visionary, we all know that. He had these visions, but they had to be carried out. And so many parents, so many wonderful people behind the scenes. And yeah, we got a little bit of credit once in a while, but it took a lot of people to make those trips happen. And I remember one incident, I was just thinking about it. We went to a little hospital in Germany, some little town someplace, and we always had a woman in the group that wanted to take us somewhere, you know, show the town off and all. So she said, "Would you come over and play for the people at the hospital?" And Tom, of course, said yes. And the kids said, "Oh, but it's our time off. We need a little time to relax." "No, we have to go play." So we go to this church, or this hospital, and we played. They had some tables, and we played our little thing there in the lobby. But we heard clapping upstairs. More clapping up there. They couldn't see us, but... So Tom said at the end of the concert, as he usually did, pack the bells up, pick up the padding and your music, and 3 octave of bells, we're going upstairs. Well, we don't have bells, we don't have tables, what can we do? So we went up, and I have pictures of the bells, the kids, probably some of you guys remember this, on their knees, on the padding, with their music in front, and people's shoes right there, and we did a concert for those people. That was the extended ministry of the church. We learned very, very quickly what that really meant. When we would go into these foreign countries, and we have about 23 concerts in 21 days or something. It was a real tour, and the other thing to remind people is that Tom called it a team, not a choir. It was a real team, and you had to be there, know your part, and all of that sort of thing. And one of the things I remember is he only asked them 2 things, interest and availability. Well, what about musicianship? Well, you know, we circle the notes, and we'll take care of all that. Just be available and have an interest. And we did. He had no trouble saying, you know that business about going to Leningrad? I remember very well him saying, you know, I think we have a foreign exchange student that is from Helsinki. Now, maybe we could do a Scandinavian tour. Oh, okay. But you know, I looked on the map and I looked right over there, and there's Leningrad. It's so close. And we can't go to Russia. We don't like them. They don't like us. We can't do this. And all of a sudden, he would say to Mrs. Lawson, put legs on it. Make it happen. And she did. But anyways, that was the kind of thing that went on for years and years and years. There were wonderful, wonderful memories that you can't even explain, but they were there. And when I look around and see some of the people that I saw as babies in the church, been there too many years, but Tom did have a vision, and he carried that out. And that's why, you know, we're all sitting here today with memories and all. So, thank you, Tom.
There's nothing more I wrote here, but we don't have time. And I wrote it because I wanted to mention it. But I'm going to close by saying that as we traveled most of all with the prayers and well wishes of the family and friends and of the session of this congregation. It's easy to be sort of in the front, but you're only in the front because you know what happens behind you. And I really mean that, Anna Mae and Peggy, very important, as well as many others. I have a list of people here. I can just go down the list. There's easily 20 names right here that I can mention. And I will if you want to see them. But it was a wonderful experience being at Southminster for those years. Now, sometime I'll come back, not in 25 years, but I'll talk about the other ministries that we had with the choir. This man here, his parents were the first group of parents that went to the White House with us. Your mother and your father. When we were waiting in one of the libraries in order to start playing, and your mother, Tim, said the White House provided tablecloth for us. They didn't like the color of our pads. And they had the presidential seal and all that engraved in the White House cloths. Mrs. Smith said, I wonder what would happen if one of those got mixed up and you were packing up your bells. She was joking, of course, but let me tell you, as soon as we were done with the bells, those tablecloths were packed up quicker than you could blink. And then my last team was with Tim's son. I think there might be some pictures of him, I'm not sure. But so the Smith family has been involved with the bells and Southminster forever.
Thank you, Tom. Just add one very quick memory, and that is we stayed, as Tom said, in private homes in Maidstone, Kent, outside of London. I was assigned to the home of the Smiths, appropriately enough. Turned out Mr. Smith, who was a delightful guy, was the county prison organist. Sounds like something right out of Monty Python, you know. It's a story. And now, we're going to hear from Pastor Dan Mary, our senior pastor from 2006 to 2019, a dynamic preacher and a great proponent of some country in Africa, you've probably heard of it, who led Southminster in establishing and constructing a much-needed secondary school in that nameless country in Africa. Tom? Dan?
I want to make sure you can hear me. Is that okay? This Sunday I did my candidating sermon at Southminster Church. My mother was in attendance, and she was sitting in the back, and after the service, two women whom she didn't know were talking to one another and said, well, I hope he's not that loud every Sunday. And my mother turned around and said, don't count on it. I have to say, I'm shocked tonight. I wore a tie because I knew John Walton would wear a tie. And you don't have a tie on, John. I mean, mean, you're killing me. You're killing me. Ugh. Just one funny memory before I get whatever I'm going to get. It's a Drew Ludwig story.
I wear a tight suit.
You don't even own one. Did you read that? But Drew was preaching one Sunday. Okay, he's up in the pulpit preaching, and a phone rings. And Drew stops and looks out at the congregation and goes, "Whose phone is that?" And I'm sitting down there going, "Oh my God, they're going to kill us." And he goes, "Oh, it's my phone." And afterwards, I said, "Who called you at 11:30 on Sunday morning?" And he said, "Oh, the guys I was playing Frisbee football with." I said, "Don't they know what you do, brother?" You know, honestly,
After that, the youth sitting in the balcony come 4 or 5 more times.
honestly, if I had any success at Southminster, it's because I was surrounded by an awesome staff. And it's really good to see a lot of them here today. And we don't look any older, do we? And that's what old people say to one another. You know? It really is a delight to be here tonight. You know, it's been fun to reconnect with people who were part of my life for a long time. Do you realize I was the senior pastor of Southminster Presbyterian Church for 14% of its life? That's a long time, you know? And even though it was a pretty long time, many of the pastors who had come before me put me to shame, you know, because they were here for literally decades. 1925, when Southminster Presbyterian Church officially became a congregation, a loaf of bread cost a nickel. Milk, 32 cents a gallon. Eggs, what are they now? $4, you know, 25 cents a dozen. Butter, 30 cents a pound. Sugar, 5 cents a pound. Beef, 15 cents. Chicken, twice as expensive. Go figure. It was 30 cents. Before you get too excited about those prices, the average salary in 1925 was $11.16 a week. And these are the saints that built that amazing building, putting their names on a mortgage that was going to be difficult to pay. It was into this environment that men and women of this young suburban community decided to build a new church. And I want to suggest to you that they were people of vision and faith. Considering that in less than 4 years after they started this project, what happened in the United States? They went into the greatest depression we have ever known, and they had put their names on mortgages, and they still had to be paid. I would suggest that as Southminster begins its second 100 years, and presently, just so you know, I'm serving as the interim pastor at the First Presbyterian Church in downtown Pittsburgh, across from the Duquesne Club. And no, I don't get to have lunch there every day, you know. We consider you all babies, okay? Because that church is 252 years old. And honestly, it's the church that planted many of the churches, because people in Mount Lebanon no longer wanted to go downtown to church anymore, because that was such a long drive. You know? The people of Southminster have left you, the congregation, congregation with an amazing building. Vera will tell you that it is on a prime piece of property in the heart of one of the premier suburbs of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Because of the vision of many insightful people, Southminster Presbyterian Church now has a financial base that few churches, few churches, have or will ever have. And I am reminded that to whom much is given, much is expected. I personally cannot wait to see what Southminster does with these resources in the future in ministry and mission. Because we are living, my friends, in a time when the world needs those resources like never, ever before. As you celebrate the first 100th year, 100 years, a new day is dawning for Southminster Presbyterian Church. I don't have to tell you that it's been a rough last 5 years. And if I could do it all over again, I would. Because sometimes you do your best growth in times of tribulation. When I look back over my faith life, the times that I have grown the most are the most difficult times in my life. Doesn't mean it's been the most fun times, and not necessarily times that I would ever want to go back to, but it is the times when I have grown the most. So a new day is dawning. You have a new pastor coming. I am so excited for you. I live in Bethel Park. We in Bethel Park hate you now for stealing that. Okay? I mean, we just hate you. Kind of thing. But we'll get over it. Okay? You know? Kathy, it is not going to be an easy ride. I'm not letting it. They're a tough bunch of people. Only because you are now the chief of 821 Indian chiefs. You know, that's the problem. That's the problem. And in some ways, Drew, we talk about this all the time. Ken, we talk about it all the time. It's like herding cats. Because once you get most of them together, one of them screams out over here, Bob Allman's over here doing something, you just never know. But it is time, Southminster Presbyterian Church, to let your light shine. To be a leader in your community. To be a leader in your presbytery. To be a leader in your denomination. And to be faithful to God's call to be servants to the world. So Southminster Presbyterian Church used to do this all the time. It's time to let your light shine. Remember? Let it shine. Let it shine. What's the last word? Let it shine. Amen.
Thanks, Dan. Now I'll call on Jennifer Stanfield, our current Director of Children and Youth Ministry, who is also on the path of ordination. Jen is going to tell us about her activities, both current and planned, with Southminster's young people, and where we're going today. Jen?
See if I can do this. I'm a little bit shorter than the two gentlemen that came So, good evening. It is so wonderful to be with you here. And just with such gratitude, thank you so much for all of you having me this evening. Before we reflect and celebrate the incredible accomplishments of the Children and Youth Ministry, I just want to say that I have some big shoes to fill. There are so many people in this room who have contributed to children and youth ministry in the past that have laid the foundation for where we are today. And I am so thankful for each and every one of you. When I came to Southminster in March of 2023, I didn't know what a wild ride it was going to be. And it really has been a wild ride. It's been a joyful ride. It's been a difficult one. And it's been one of, as Dan Mary just put it, growth. And we have also seen the faithfulness of God through the lives of our young people and those who serve them. They have just grown so much. But first and foremost, we have witnessed spiritual growth in remarkable ways. One of the first ways is on Sunday morning, Sunday school classes and youth group meetings. They've not only grown in attendance, but also in depth. We currently have anywhere from 20 to 25 children in our Sunday school program in the mornings, and we have 8 wonderful, they're amazing. I can't say enough praises about them, our Sunday school teachers. So can we just thank them? Let me tell you, without their dedication and without their love to the children and to their faith and the church, we would not have Sunday school. And I am so thankful for each and every one of them. I think we have a few here tonight. I'm gonna point you out. Christy, can you stand up in the back? Cecile? And we also have a lot of substitute teachers as well. Cynthia? And if I'm forgetting anyone, I apologize. But oh, Amy, stand up. Thank you all so much for your dedication, for your love, for your time to these children. And the youth group, when I came, the youth group was actually on a break. But now, currently, we have anywhere from 11 to 14 kids coming each Sunday to the youth group. They not only come and they dedicate their time to Scripture, but they also participate in worship. And we've actually seen a lot of their own dedication in leading worship in their confirmation, the statements of faith, which I have a few youth sitting over there. Jordan. It is an absolute joy to lead them. And as we celebrate all of those accomplishments, I also want to celebrate the leadership developing that we have happening in the ministry right now. This year we have welcomed even more Sunday school teachers than we have in the past. And through those leadership training sessions and discipleship programs, we are seeing future teachers, community leaders, and leaders of our church being shaped right here at Southminster. Our ministry has also made an impact in our community. We have outreach programs. We have youth mission trip programs. We have gone to Washington, D.C. We have one planned in July. We have Vacation Bible School. We have the Angel Tree, Produce for People, and so many other programs that our children and our youth are a part of. They've packed meals. They have raised funds for missions. And they have demonstrated that they have compassion and growth beyond their years. Their spiritual maturity is something that I have seen develop, and it has been such a blessing over these past few years. But none of this would be possible without the tireless dedication of our volunteers, our teachers, parents, and our ministry leaders. There are so many in this room. Thank you for planting the seeds of faith, for showing up week after week, and for believing in the potential of our youth. And as we look ahead, I am so excited. We have so many plans, and we have so much opportunity for our children, not just for now, but for the future. And as Philippians 1:6 says, he who began good work in them will carry it on to completion. We are just getting started. So let us continue to invest, to support, and to pray for the next generation. They are not just the church of tomorrow, but they are the church of today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Jen. Our next speaker, my grade school classmate, pastoral care associate Fred Barnes, does everything from preaching, leading seminars and prayer groups, to running the Adult Interest Center, singing in the choir, and just generally keeping the wheels turning smoothly. Fred, will you say a few words?
Temple when we were in kindergarten, who would have thought 69 years later we'd be here together, huh? In 1951, my parents moved from Wilmington, Delaware to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was just a glint in my father's eye at that time. And I have to tell you a funny story about my mom. They, first, after the war, my dad went back to school at Dickinson College and flunked out of law school. And at that point, in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, my brother was born in 1946. And so after he was not successful at law school, he went back home to Wilmington, Delaware, and that's where my sister Jane, who's right over here, was born. And then in 1951, he decided to come to Pittsburgh as a part of his dad's business to sell candy. And I was born. My mother thought every time she moved, she would have a child. So we assured her that's not how it works. She goes, I don't care, I'm never moving again, and she didn't. She still lives, we still live in the same house that they bought in 1951. But they made a really good choice when they moved here. They looked immediately for a church, and they chose Southminster. And we've been here ever since, in 1951. And I love you guys. And I love you because in 1965, at the age of 13, you helped me say goodbye to my father. And you supported me. And you were there. And 40 years later, when we lost my mother in 2005, you were there. And you had made reception for her. Made us feel like everything's going to be okay. When my brother died in 2016, you were there. He's in the Columbarium. I go out and tell him about the pirates every once in a while. I say, you know, nothing's changed. And he ended his career as the state correspondent down in Harrisburg. And he was there when Ed Rendell was there, who was a gift to all reporters, because Ed would say anything at any time to anybody. And that's a reporter's delight. So at that point, what was I going to say? Help me, Jane. Anyway, it was a good decision. I was thinking tonight, just at my little table, how many years of dedication have been given to this church? We're over like 300 already at our table. If you would add up everybody here, it would be well over 1,000. Thousands and thousands of years have been given to Southminster. It's been difficult in the last 5 years, but I agree with Dan. The time of growth in my life has always come at the lowest moments. You got to push through. You got to try again. You got to do it a different way. Guess what, folks? You have done that. The best is yet to come. Kathy, welcome. I look forward to ministry with you and with all of these fine people. Thank you for all that you have done in the last 10 years.
It's always great to hear from someone who, like me, was here when the Dead Sea was still sick. Having looked at the present and having looked at the past, we're now going to look on to the future. We're going to hear a few words from the person who's going to lead us there. Kathy, I leave it to you.
Do like Dan and see feel more comfortable this way. So first, let me say thank you for even inviting me to be a part of this night. I haven't even started my first day, and you have already included me in your celebration, and so I appreciate that so much. I am looking so forward to the life that we will share together, this future that we will be walking into together, this best that is yet to come that we will experience in our life together. Not for 100 years. I don't think I'll make it that long. But for however long God has for us to be together, which I hope will be a good, long time. I'm looking forward to working with this incredible staff that you have, that has formed, these people that you have heard from, and those that I have met. I've enjoyed meeting so many of you already, but there are an enormous number of you I have not, and so I'm looking so forward to getting to know all of you in this journey that we will walk in together. So in this time of celebrating the past 100 years and celebrating the history of the church, it's interesting to be speaking because I don't have any history with you all yet. So I've been thinking a lot about the nature of time and how time works and our experience of time and the biblical understanding of time. So I just want to reflect a little bit on that with you as we think about what the relationship between past and future is. So I have completed my time at the church I was serving at Bethel. I have this month that was set aside to read, to relax, and family things always kind of come in, and suddenly we're doing all kinds of stuff for and with our kids. But there's some fun that we built into this month before I get started. And two things have happened in the past week. One was just a fun thing that Joel and I got to do, and another thing was a family thing that we did. And at both of these events in the past week, I heard the same song being played. That song, if anybody knows, is a song Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield. Does anybody know this song? Okay, so not very many. So the second time I heard this song this week was last night. So Joel and I had the opportunity to go to the inaugural game of the Pittsburgh Riveters, which is Pittsburgh's first women's soccer team. And so we are psyched about that, and so we got season tickets for 2 years. We committed to them, and we've been just so excited reading about this team coming together and going and seeing how this is going to all come together, and just seeing these girls that are so excited to represent Pittsburgh. And so we were able to go to the inaugural game last night. It was a sellout. It was fantastic. And as the game went on, you know, it was scoreless. It was a tie, 0-0. But that wasn't the point. The point was these young women out there playing their hardest, and playing this game for this brand new thing for them and for Pittsburgh. And at the end of the game, as they were walking off the field, that's when they played Unwritten. And if you don't know the song says, you know, It's about the story of your life. The rest is still unwritten, right? Stare at the blank page before you open up the dirty window, let the sun illuminate the pages. So it's about writing the story of what's next. So it's about possibilities, and it's about the wonder of what is yet to happen and yet to come. And so for this soccer team, just getting started, for these young women at such a young point and beginning point in their lives, the rest for them is still unwritten. There's so many possibilities. It was the perfect song for them to exit the field of their inaugural game, of the inaugural team, of the inaugural season of women's soccer in Pittsburgh. But the first time we heard this song played this week was when we were down at Duke University for our son Ben's graduation as he was receiving his master's degree. And so that weekend was first on Saturday was the hooding ceremony. That was this nice intimate thing. And then on Sunday morning was the big graduation of all 6,000 some graduates, undergraduates through doctoral students. And it was a pretty typical college graduation. But at one point, a quartet came up to sing a song a cappella, and they ran some slides that started 4 years ago. So it included pictures of some of those undergraduates moving into their dorm for the first time, and the freshman celebrations, and then all kinds of sports events and school events and weather events that had happened over the past 4 years. So while they're watching all these pictures of the past 4 years, this quartet is singing Unwritten. While they're thinking about the past and seeing the past, they're being sung to about this unwritten future ahead of them. And that's what graduations are anyway, aren't they? The word commencement, of course, means to commence. The ending of your school years are the beginning of this next life. And this is the way so much of the way time works is, that what is a beginning is actually an ending. And what is an ending is actually a beginning. If you think about a piano keyboard, your do is your do is your do. And so the end of one scale is the beginning of the next. And this is the way it is with time. When we think about time, you have past, you have future, and you have present. And present is actually this very thin little line that just is ever moving. This little edge between what is past and what is ahead. You say a sentence, and already the first word of the sentence is in the past by the time you get to the last word of that sentence. This is the way that we are invited scripturally and biblically to be thinking about time. We serve the God of creation, the God of all time, the one whom the psalmist tells us, for him, our 1,000 years is like a moment. And so past and future and present, they're all the same story for the one we worship and serve. And so for us, past and present and future are all one story. Which is why in the Bible we're told over and over again, God's people have been told over and over again, remember, remember, remember. Because in remembering, it takes what is past and it brings it into the future, and it makes it part of your future story and your present story. And so those past 100 years, the past 5 years, the past week, they're not part of my memories. But as I come and join the Southminster family, they become part of my story as much as they are part of your story. So as we get to know each other better, you're going to learn that I am a reader. I am a big-time reader, as will be attested by the 32 boxes of books waiting to be moved into the office. But what I love to read are books that have sequels or come in series. Because when you read a book, you get so immersed in that story, right? The characters become people you know and you love, and the storyline is so interesting, and it comes to an end, and you just think, well, what will have to happen to them next? And so when there's a sequel, you get more of them. And when there's a series, you get even more of them. But they're not completely different books. that are telling completely different stories. There will be threads that will carry through. The same characters, although new characters will come. The same themes, although in different books, different themes will shine. New events and new challenges that they will face, but they're always connected somehow to what's in the past. You know, when as God's people, as followers of Christ, we know that we are part of this story that is so much bigger than who we are. It is the long, long story from before time to beyond eternity. The story of God and his people. The story of God who says, I will be your God and you will be my people. And it is the story of God's people walking with God. Whether we are walking on lives of faith individually or we are walking together as a church, that is the story. And as we walk, there are chapters in this story where we are walking strongly and upright. And there are going to be stories and chapters in this big story where we are crawling and barely pulling ourselves and dragging ourselves along. And there are going to be times when we are running with abandon and joy in this life of faith, in this life together. And there will be times, like in the past 5 years, where we may be stumbling or limping or struggling along the way. But these are all part of this walk with God. But here's the thing. As while we may walk in different ways, but God never walks in a different way. Through the whole big story, God is walking faithfully, strongly, and firmly with us. That is the story of God and his people. That is the story of every church. Chapters in this story that are tough, chapters in this story that are smooth, chapters in this story that are so joyful, and chapters that are filled with such sorrow. But the theme that carries it all through in this one big story is this good and faithful God. The worst thing is when you're reading a book and you get to the end and there is some cliffhanger there and you know there's a sequel coming. But you have to wait 2 years. You reread that book like 4 times in those 2 years so you don't forget the story when they finally get the sequel out. When is that author going to sit down at their desk and finally write the story? That is a story left unwritten. But here's the thing. The story of us, the story of God, the story of Southminster has never been unwritten. Past and future, and that thin little line of the present, God is always and continually writing Southminster's story. We just get to live it. And to live it today and tomorrow and the next day. And I'm so excited that we're going to get to live it together. And those memories of the past 100 years, of that faithful group of people who had a desire, who expressed it, who made that first committee to explore it, to your session that is working so hard now. It's a great story. We get to be a part of it and to live it and walk it together each day, each week, each year, on into the future. Yeah, I wouldn't say the best is yet to come, but there's some great stuff coming, and I cannot wait to be a part of it with you all. Thank you.
Well, Sarah, I'm glad we came this evening, and I must say, for people known as God's chosen Frozens, Presbyterians sure throw a nice party.
Yeah, I agree, Joseph. And as you know, they've got a lot to celebrate. In the 100 years that I've served as their guardian angel, the members of Southminster Church have gone from 84 people meeting in a school auditorium in 1925 to a thriving congregation of worshipers that has survived through the Depression, a world war, Y2K, a pandemic, and an increasingly secular society.
Yes, and as you and I have noted in our prior discussions on Cloud 9, they have done their best to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ around the community, the nation, and the globe. The reflections we see tonight from prior, present, and oncoming staff members show some of the ways that Southminster is continuing to spread the good news. The members must be very proud of their accomplishments.
Yes, actually, Joseph, they realize that all of the good that they have experienced and done in the past 100 years is attributable solely to the grace of God and not to their own goodness.
As long as they continue to recognize that, I see a bright second 100 years for your Southminster Church. The evening's program says that we conclude with a video. Why don't we sit down and watch it, and then head back to Cloud 9 for some angel food cake?
Hey, I'm into that.